Next is the good of the cause for the public, where members of the public are invited to express themselves on educational issues of concern. Members are reminded that comments are limited to 5 minutes, and this is a televised meeting to protect the privacy of all students and staff. Concerns regarding individual students and staff members should generally first be addressed by meeting with the appropriate administrative staff. If you're going to please come to the good of the cause, please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name is Yvonne Bronco. I reside at 26 Bucknell Drive. Thank you for the opportunity. I was here last meeting, and I did not have the opportunity because of the change in the agenda. I'm going to speak tonight as a continuation of my ongoing PARCC discussion for the parents that are here. I started the discussion with the district back in October of 2014 with an email communication with Dr. Ogden. She's not here tonight, and I really wanted to answer a question she asked me, but I'll save it for the May meeting. Back in October, just to give some background information, back in October 2014, I reached out to Dr. Ogden with the question, what was the protocol that East Brunswick was going to follow for parents who were going to refuse PARCC? And I was very picky with my words, and I used the word refuse. And I received an answer back from her stating that there was no opting out. I sent her an email back, and I said, perhaps you overlooked the fact that I used the word refuse. She ignored my email for 3 weeks. I sent her the email again. She sent it back and said, if you tell your children to refuse, your child will be asked to sit quietly while their colleagues take the test. I said, okay, thank you. I will share that information with other parents that were concerned. January board meeting, I stood in front of this board, and I brought that information to the public. And once I left, I received, within 24 hours, I received an invite to have a meeting with Dr. Valesky, and I shared my concerns with Dr. Valesky. And at that meeting, I recommended that we have a community meeting, because I don't want him to think I'm the only crazy parent that has this concern. And we had that community meeting. We had 10 parents. And again, Dr. Valesky was very professional and respectful. He validated our concerns. And at that meeting, Dr. Ogden was also present. And unfortunately, she didn't share that same professionalism that Dr. Valesky shared. And I communicated that with Dr. Valesky that through an email, because I was finding that my rights as a parent were being violated. And she was, and I really wish she were here, because when I addressed the board the first time, I was professional, I was courteous, I withheld names. But at that community meeting, she was, what's the words that I used? She was confrontational, defensive, disrespectful, condescending, and downright rude in the manner in which she spoke to me and to all the other parents, just seeking answers to questions that were in the best interests of their children. She sat there and asked us, what gave us the right to refuse that test for our kids? And as a person that was raised in the European house and that was taught, you respect your elders. You don't answer back. I didn't answer her. But I have an answer for her at the next meeting. So that happened last year. This year, something else is going on. And as a result of the meeting, we went from sit and stare to alternate location, alternate activity. And I thank the board and Dr. Valesky for listening to the parents. This year, not my children directly, but you'll hear from the children themselves, the students themselves, and you'll hear from parents where they are being addressed by staff, by different levels of staff, counselors, principals. They were being misinformed, being intimidated, harassed, bullied. New Jersey has the toughest anti-bullying law. We hold our children accountable. We have procedures. We have consequences for children. If they are harassed,
1 minute.
harassed or bullied, we need to have consequences for adults that are harassing our children. And I think that is what we need to address. Because our children should not be asked or told misinformation. My boys, they're here. They stand up for themselves. I'm raising educated citizens, and when someone tells them something that's inaccurate, they say, no, that's proposed. That's not the law. And I hope I'm doing a good job, and I don't want them to be disrespectful, but I want them to stand up for themselves. And unfortunately, not every child has the nerve to stand up and tell a teacher, you're wrong. I'm sorry, you're wrong. And when I sent my refusal letter, every teacher got a copy. There's no right for any teacher to dedicate instructional time to address PARCC, or it being a graduation requirement, which it is not, to the students. That is not right, and that needs to be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Karen Goldstein. I live at 61 Cleveland Avenue. First, like several other parents here tonight, I believe that it is in the best interest of all East Brunswick public school students for our district to maintain multiple paths to graduation. I urge the Board of Ed to vote on the resolution regarding this matter, which we provided to you over a week ago, tonight. It's time you stopped attempting to placate us with empty rhetoric. Actions speak louder than words. Before I read the rest of this, please know that my child and I are comfortable with our level of disclosure. Next, I would like to bring to your attention an incident which occurred on Monday at Churchill in one of the refuse rooms, as they're now being called. I learned of this incident from my son via text. According to my 9th grader, he and several others were playing cards and a few different games after reading for a while. They asked the sub, who was supervising them in the room, if they could do so, as they had with the succession of subs in and out of the rooms on all the other test days, and she gave her consent, as had all the others before her. After a while, Ms. Dragonetti entered the room, yelled at the 20 or so students that they were not allowed to play card games or any games. They were only allowed to read in the room. I wanted to get the whole story. So I called and left a message for Ms. Dragonetti, asking her to return my call to clarify what had happened. Shortly thereafter, I received a return call from Mr. Suter, who let me know that Ms. Dragonetti was on the line as well. I thanked them for returning my call, apologized for my son's part in the incident, they were his cards, and asked why it was such a big deal. Ms. Dragonetti stated that the classroom was a circus. I told her that vilifying the students because the sub had no classroom management skills or just didn't care appeared to be retaliation because the students' parents had chosen to refuse the test. She went on to tell me that the students in the refuse rooms were not allowed to have fun because the students taking the tests were not having fun, and how would that look to them? I told her that that really was not my problem, how it looked to others, but maybe they should consider why it was such a big deal to the administration. Mr. Suter then told me that in addition to reading, the students could do classwork. Fine, but they don't have any because teachers are not teaching or assigning any work of any kind. They watch a lot of movies. He retorted that they should read for 2 hours then. I explained that this option, at least for my child, does not follow his IEP, and they would not be in compliance for least restrictive environment. They ended the call at this time. The board should set policy that is grade level specific, which details the acceptable options for those not taking the test due to the parent's choice to refuse the test. Please be sure that there are options available so that the schools are in compliance with, at a bare minimum, least restrictive environment. Thank you very much.
My name is Ben Goldstein. I live at 61 Cleveland Avenue. I'm a 9th grader at Churchill Junior High School. Taking and preparing for standardized tests greatly affects students' mental and physical health. When a child has standardized tests, they are more likely to come to school too tired from not getting enough sleep the night before because they are worried about taking tests. Kids might even come to school sick or just to take the test. There have been reports of kids even crying or vomiting from the amount of anxiety that the test caused students. According to the United Federation of Teachers, many kids suddenly feel like failures. When a student feels like a failure, they have a greater chance of having low self-esteem. Having low self-esteem can lead to issues like depression. Since these tests are causing students to have low self-esteem, they're helping the child think poorly about themselves, which is not okay. Standardized testing at a young age can take away the love of school. This is terrible because if a child does not like school, they won't take it seriously and do poorly in school. Standardized tests also affect teachers greatly. A study shows that teachers spend about 29% of their teaching time on teaching to the test. That means the teacher is only teaching the information that will be on the test. Another study shows that 72% of teachers feel moderate or extreme pressure from schools to make test scores better. The fact that teachers are feeling pressure in any way is not okay. The reason is that when a teacher feels threatened, they might not want to teach anymore. Also, because of tests, teachers are now more than ever are reporting lower job satisfaction. One thing tests do is to claim to be able to evaluate the teacher by showing how well the teacher is able to teach to the test. Now, with all the effects of standardized tests coming out, teachers, students, and parents are seeing how harmful they really are. Standardized tests are not an accurate measure of students' knowledge because not everyone does well on tests. They might do better in a discussion than a writing assignment. When standards for standardized tests were raised, this test score dramatically dropped. The only logical explanation for this is that the tests are badly written tests. This shows that no matter how hard a student might prepare for one of these tests, it does not help. Students need to be able to apply knowledge, not just regurgitate it. One thing that this test does show is that it would be a lot harder than expected to have the students meet the new criteria. The only thing that standardized tests show is how book smart someone is, not how creative they are, not how good a person they are, etc. Teachers and students are speaking out against standardized tests. Teachers say that teaching time has been replaced with test prep and tests themselves. This practice is probably called drill and kill. A teacher at East Brunswick High School was interviewed about how they felt about standardized tests. The teacher is not against all standardized tests, only the testing that is not necessary for college. When asked about what their teaching style is now, they said, "I often teach the test." When asked to elaborate on this, they said they are happy to teach the test if, again, the test is necessary. If the test is pointless, they do not see teaching to the test as positive way of teaching. They were also asked if test scores should be the sole determining factor of students' placement in college or placement in school. The response was, "I think it is okay for testing to be one component of course placement, but should never be the sole determining factor in deciding students' future." She also stated that she believes that tests should be done on paper using a pencil because studies show that people can get their thoughts down better this way. A student at Churchill Junior High School was also interviewed. The test that these students take is called PARCC. When asked about how this standardized test made them feel, the student said it was stressful. When asked to elaborate on the statement, all they could say was the test was much harder than they were told it was going to be. They also felt that they were ill-prepared for the long hours of testing. They were also asked how they felt about taking the test on a computer. The response was harder because it gave me a headache and made me feel like I was going to puke. If even a student can see how bad PARCC is, something needs to change. Both teachers and students agree that the test does not do what it's supposed to do. Instead, it causes unnecessary stress, lowers self-esteem, and forces teachers to teach the test. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. Margie Charleston, 7 Hemlock Court.
Excuse me. Could you repeat your name again?
Sorry, Margie Charleston,
Thank you.
7 Hemlock Court. Before I read, I just wanted to share that I'm here tonight, and it's uncharacteristic for me to be here. I'm class mom, I'm field trip mom, bake sale mom. I am not public school advocate mom. So to know that for me to be here tonight, that I really truly do feel that we have a problem within our schools. I attempted to address the board at the last meeting to discuss my concern regarding the negative climate children had experienced simply because their parents had refused PARCC testing for them. We all agree that PARCC has been a disruption to the schools, resulting in a huge loss of instructional time and district funding. What we did not anticipate was the breakdown of trust and collaboration between our superintendent, Board of Education, principals, teachers, parents, and students. For me, the animosity began as soon as I sent in my refusal letter last year for my children, and I was met with objection and told that there was no opt-out, even though I clearly wrote refused in my letter. After meeting with Dr. Voleski and other educational leaders and parents, we were assured refusal students would have a place to read in a non-testing room and not be penalized for their parents' decision. I was satisfied with our refusal policy and very pleased with the board that they respected our decision. After testing, my children shared with me that they had felt uncomfortable being approached by a teacher or counselor who had asked them why they weren't testing. I decided to request in this year's refusal letter that no teacher, counselor, or admin should discuss PARCC refusal with my children. Any concerns should be made directly to me and my husband. Even after doing this, my daughter was told by professionals at Hammersholt that it would be difficult to place her in classes in Churchill next year without having PARCC scores. Even she realized how ridiculous this statement was. 7 years of grades, report cards, and teacher evaluations would not suffice in placing her. When the data collected from one unvalidated test becomes the only tool used in placing our children, we should recognize that we're steering in the wrong direction. My son was also told it would be a problem going forward for him because he does not have PARCC scores. He was told in front of the entire class that because he didn't have test scores, only his common assessment course scores would be used, and this would be an issue for future graduation. He's in 7th grade. He tried to explain PARCC was not a graduation requirement and was told his information source, me, was wrong. As upsetting as it is for me to hear that a teacher is relaying misinformation, I can understand since our own district website had false PARCC facts up until we brought it to the board's attention at the last meeting. Once again, I reached out to share my children's negative experience and received no response. On Monday, my daughter was in a class where they were told that children need to understand they can't opt out of life, they can't opt out of a job, they can't opt out of everything. This creates a very uncomfortable environment for refusal children, especially if they're the only child in the class that's refusing. As the district places more of an emphasis on the importance of taking PARCC, our children are being met with more of these hostile situations, even from peers. I am concerned that admin, teachers, and counselors are being pressured to provide misleading information in regard to PARCC to lower refusal numbers and comply with our corrective action plan. The desperation to have all children participate in the PARCC test seems to have overridden good judgment and the best intentions for our children. Parental decisions are not being respected, and students are being put in very uncomfortable positions where they feel they are disappointing their teachers or defying authority. I'm disappointed that the Board of Education has not properly addressed this or even made an attempt to hear our concerns at the last meeting, which would have prevented the previous episode. It's not easy being a child or a parent who has refused PARCC for their children. There's a lot of negative comments made against our choice. But we chose to refuse PARCC to protect the excellence in our schools that our teachers provide every day. As I said in my last prepared statement, which I did email after the meeting, many have said I should trust my district. The point is I do trust my district, but I know that the PARCC implementation was not your choice. I trust that you will rise as educational leaders and ensure that our principals, counselors, and teaching staff have factual information regarding PARCC and foster an environment where all students feel supported, regardless of what their parents' stand on PARCC is. Last, I trust that you will vote and pass the proposed resolution against making PARCC a graduation requirement, just like many other districts have. Vote yes and profess a bold statement that the East Brunswick Board of Education will serve in the best interests of the students and teachers, not those of a test-taking company or politicians. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mrs. Charleston.
Hi, Debra Cinema, 8 Francis Road. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the Board of Education. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Debra Cinema. I've lived in East Brunswick for over 30 years. I was educated in East Brunswick from kindergarten through high school and have returned to this district as a parent of young children due almost solely to the reputation of its outstanding schools. Although I am a National Board Certified Educator with over 20 years' experience in the classroom, the nature of the subject matter I teach is not evaluated by the PARCC assessment. So I come here tonight solely as a concerned parent and taxpayer. While I'm not opposed to educational assessment and accountability, I cannot stand by and allow my children's learning environment to be sullied by a for-profit attempt to hijack what is educationally sound in order to impose an ill-conceived agenda of reform upon our great schools. I think almost all, if not all in this room, are well aware that New Jersey schools are required to administer PARCC assessments to public school students who are in grades 3 through 11. It's also obvious to this assemblage that the East Brunswick Board of Education does not have the authority to refuse the directive of the New Jersey Department of Education. I come here tonight to appeal to the Board of Education to become a catalyst of true educational vision and leadership by publicly acknowledging both the grave curricular and pedagogical concerns that have emerged in relation to this assessment, as well as recognizing the rights of parents to refuse to subject their children to a series of tests that are both diagnostically and instructionally worthless. Set an example to our children of what real leadership looks like. Do not allow outside influences more interested in profit than educational improvement to continue to sink the greatness of our schools for their own selfish gain. Question the real reasons why this assessment tool, beset with documented problems, is being forwarded as New Jersey's only graduation exit exam. Please do not forget that this test, in the words taken from the PARCC website itself, was created to, quote, provide better information for teachers and parents to identify where a student needs help or are excelling, so they are able to enhance instruction to meet individual student needs. In the words of PARCC, this testing tool was conceived and fashioned to allegedly improve and evaluate teaching and teachers. It is improperly being imposed upon our students as a graduation requirement only to force compliance and therefore create a sort of pseudo-validity for its usage. Do not ignore the fact that while other states are abandoning the use of PARCC in any capacity, New Jersey is the only state in the union to use PARCC in this improper manner. In closing, I without reservation implore the members of the East Brunswick Board of Education to publicly play a leading role in challenging the use of this unsound and unvalidated assessment as a measurement of student achievement. Please do not support the New Jersey Department of Education's attempt to strong-arm districts and parents into supporting PARCC. Please allow your administrators to clearly communicate what they have been required by the state to tell children and parents who refuse, without relying upon coercion to increase the number of test takers. Any sort of assessment that relies on intimidation and pressure of stakeholders in an educational setting in order to gain support is a farce. This testing instrument does not value the core necessities of a fruitful learning environment and serves to demotivate our young while at the same time provides their teacher with no authentic feedback. Simply towing the line in relation to this bogus assessment instrument is a disservice to the children of East Brunswick and will inhibit the district's ability to truly promote its message of, quote, excellence in academics, athletics, and the arts. Support this proposed resolution. Do what is right, not what is easy. Again, thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Arena Kona, and I am a 7th grader at Hammersholt Middle School. I have lived in East Brunswick for about 9 years, and never have I ever felt more disappointed in our education system. School is supposed to be a safe place for students. Instead, I find myself being judged by test scores, judged by students, and worst of all, judged by my teachers, the ones I look up to. Over the past few weeks, many of my fellow peers and students have given me false information and have tried to intimidate me and scare me into taking PARCC. Those who know about my decision on not taking the test do not respect it. I have received many negative comments on why my decision is wrong. I should feel comfortable with my decision. Instead, I have the people who are supposed to bring me to success pushing me down. I've had many people talk down to me because they feel like I'm making a bad decision. Many people told me that I will not graduate this year and I'll be held back. This test does not tell you who you are. The test does not say whether you are smart or you are unintelligent. This test should not explain your future. This test is just a test. I am sharing my experience with you today because through this whole experience, I felt trapped. I will not do something that I do not want to do, and no one can make me. I do not appreciate my peers and teachers using scare tactics to get me to take this test. It is my decision to take this test or to not take this test, and it is not their job to tell me that my decision is wrong. I want to go to school and be able to learn and fulfill my education, but I will not let the people around me bully me into doing something that I do not want to do. I hope you take what I said today into consideration, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening, fellow residents, board members, I appreciate the time you're giving me. As a parent, I do believe that there is such a thing as a good standardized test. I do believe that schools need to assess students, and those who teach students need to be held accountable. PARCC, however, it seriously lacks in achieving those goals. It has serious issues in its construction and its implementation. It's just not a well-designed test. We're making a grave mistake here. We currently use the wrong test to make the most important educational decisions. These tests deceive our children about the goals of education. The expanded practice of standardized testing itself sends a bad, loud, and clear message that only education that's really valued is what is measured by these tests. This test devours a significant amount of time and resources. The old NJ Ask and HESPA test disrupted classes for 3 days. PARCC, a week and a half. A week and a half. Add to that the practice time before the week and a half that they're losing. And the fact that during this entire time, teachers aren't giving homework. Teachers are teaching to the test. They're no longer teaching their normal curriculum. Mr. Simmons, you said in the last meeting, PARCC is very deficient. I understand that the board, you have to follow the rules. We get it. We also understand that there's a corrective action plan in place. We understand why that it's in place. The problem is with this test, it's inconsistent with the values that we have here in East Brunswick. It's inconsistent with what we have created here as a district. This is a proud community. The first banner you see waved when anyone walks into town is our educational district. This test is absolutely inconsistent. It's changing us as a community. You've heard the testimony of my daughter. It's been a rough week and a half. It required 1 meeting, 2 phone calls, 3 emails to the principal, assistant principal, guidance counselor. It also required me to send an email to every single one of her teachers who did not speak to her, about 5 of them, about PARCC yet, asking them politely, please, do not talk to her about PARCC. We've already refused. The decision's been made. Thank you. In your corrective action plan, kids have been told it determines class placement. Scores get posted on transcripts. Students will face penalties if they don't take the exam. They've been told it's a graduation requirement. I think that just adds up to lies, coercion, intimidation. The district has been extremely careful by looking at Dr. Gaskell's emails to make sure that the kids who are taking this extraordinarily long test are not stressed by this test. We need to put that same amount of effort into the kids who are refusing to take the test to make sure that they're not bullied, intimidated, and coerced. Your council last time said people are not required to take the PARCC test. We don't impose punishment, retribution, etc. The board itself has voiced their opinions on PARCC, personal. That language is not being translated downwards, just so you know. As parents of children who have refused PARCC, we understand you don't make the laws. We also understand that you agree to uphold the laws. We understand that you are duty-bound. We also understand that the state funding can't be withheld. We also understand that you are under tremendous duress because it is an unfunded mandate, and that budget is now getting dwindled away even further by this unfunded mandate. But you have to take into consideration 10 other Board of Educations have put forth a resolution without the added benefit of the ruling of Judge Betancourt. East Windsor, Highland Park, Clifton, Hopewell Valley, Bloomfield, Washington Township, Middlesex Educational Services, Patterson, Princeton recently, and Bridgewater Raritan very recently.
1 minute.
Actions do speak louder than words. You've had your opinion, you've made your opinion clear, but not doing anything is inconsistent with the way this district has behaved. This district has every reason to be proud. Every time I come into this room, I have the proud honor of looking across and seeing a friend of mine, a friend of my son's, Papa, over there. I don't know how well you know Papa, but he is the epitome, and with the good reason why Dr. Valesky chose him. He is a brilliant example of what this district creates. This exam is absolutely inconsistent. I'm asking you, pass the resolution. Send a message to the State Board of Ed that this exam is not working. Thank you.
Thank you. Excuse me, sir. One
moment,
sec here.
sir.
Come on back 1 second.
Just need your name for the record.
I'm sorry, I'm Dara Kona, I live at 3 Robin Court.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Alexandra Walsh, and I'm a 7th grader at HMS School. I am also a student who refused PARCC. This so-called helpful test is not a test worth taking because it's benefiting the education of East Brunswick students. I don't see any benefit in sitting in a class working on an 8-page long packet just to prepare for a test. I call this a waste of my education. It is also important to mention that teachers are telling students that we have to take PARCC in order to graduate. This is false information. I look up to my teachers and trust them to give me the correct information. It is also not fair that some teachers are rewarding students who are taking the PARCC and giving them PAW tickets, which are used for weekly prizes. Why wouldn't teachers reward students who are not taking the test as well? After all, it is our right to refuse, and the district is respecting those refusals. I am both confused and disappointed by this. I sat in a room with other children who were taking the PARCC. The teacher in the room asked several of the students why they have chosen not to take the PARCC. She also said, "Wouldn't you rather just take the PARCC than sit here and do nothing?" Those questions make me feel very uncomfortable. My mother already explained to me why she wanted to refuse PARCC when she sent the refusal letter. Teachers should not be addressing the students. The school closes the library during PARCC, which affects many students. Currently, I'm excused from gym, and I have to go to the library to do work while gym is present. Given the library is closed, I have to go to the nurse's office to sit. You may be thinking, okay, so what's so bad about that? Well, would you like to be sitting next to six students who are throwing up right next to you, waiting because of the nurse? Some of them are actually throwing up right next to me. This was very uncomfortable, and I should have been placed in a room that was suitable for a healthy child. If it were not for the teacher who saw me in there and insisted I'd be moved, I would have to sit in the nurse's office for more than a week. At school, we are taught to stand up for things that are not right. In my opinion, both Common Core and the PARCC are not right. I hope that words of both the students and parents that have come here to speak this evening allows you to think and consider how PARCC is affecting our school system. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ronnie Walsh, 10 Peach Orchard Drive. Good evening. I appreciate the time you are all taking to listen to us. I would like to explain to you why I have chosen to refuse PARCC for my children. First, I would like to express my appreciation to the East Brunswick School District and acknowledge that my children are receiving an exceptional education. All the teachers and staff are to be commended, for they have encouraged and inspired my children to reach for the stars. I am proud to stand here before you today and tell you that my oldest son, who attended college on a 4-year full-ride academic scholarship, graduated with honors in May of 2015 and is currently employed full-time. My second son, a college freshman, taking 20 credits, made Dean's List and has been asked by his professors, "Where did you attend high school?" because of his excellent writing skills. My third son, who received the Presidential Award for Academic Excellence at his 5th grade graduation, is currently a 9th grader at Churchill and on an honors track. That brings me to my 4th child, my daughter, who has an IEP. While she is very capable, she learns differently. Through modifications and accommodations in her IEP, she is able to reach her potential. I have been told that there are accommodations that can be given to her during the PARCC. They are exactly the same accommodations she is currently receiving. However, given the PARCC test was not tested by special education teachers and not developmentally matched to her grade level or specific learning disability, it will just be another test to tell her she's not good enough. It will be like the Naviance test, which results told her that she was not college and career ready. Her teacher asked her to take it a second time and even a third on a different computer. However, she was given the same results. Her self-esteem was crushed, and she feared she was never going to college. I'm sure we can all agree that self-esteem is key to any child's success, and especially to those who face academic challenges. My daughter is good enough and smart enough. She earned all A's and B's and made honor roll every quarter this year. She was the lead in the school play, and all of her teachers think she's a wonderful young lady with advanced verbal skills. They say she is mature for her age, confident about herself, as well as a leader. She has also learned to be an excellent advocate for herself. Her self-esteem and self-worth are more important than PARCC. I'm confident to stand here before you today and tell you that PARCC tests will do nothing for her. It will only waste valuable instruction time, which is already proven can help her. Please consider that if PARCC is made a graduation requirement, my daughter will have to take the test, and if she does not pass because it is not matched to her learning disabilities, she won't be able to graduate. This makes no sense and is unfair. I hope you will consider this not for only my daughter, but for the many other children who have IEPs in the district. In closing, I would like to say that I'm very concerned about the comments some teachers have made to my daughter regarding the park. While I'm addressing at a school level, I believe the district should have a clear written policy regarding this. At the last BOE meeting, several board members expressed concern about the park and vocally discounted the test as a colossal disruption to our schools. I trust the actions you take regarding park will match your words, and if not, you'll provide us with a valid explanation as to why. That is what I expect from those people I elected in my community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Walsh.
Good evening. My name is Emma Hoover, and as a 7th grade student at Hammersholt, I would like to speak to you about PARCC and the misinformation I am being told by the people I look up to. Over the last few weeks, some of my classmates and I have been given incorrect information and feel as though it was done intentionally in order to scare us into taking PARCC. Even though I knew the facts and I knew it's not required and my family made an informed decision, I felt that our decision was not respected. This was upsetting because I then knew that I had more correct information than those in authority. Dr. Gaskell addressed the children whose parents refused and told us that even though many of our parents feel strongly that they made the right decision to refuse PARCC, that it's a graduation requirement, it will affect our placement next year, and if we don't take it this year, we will have to make it up next year on top of that year's PARCC test. I raised my hand to tell him that is not yet a graduation requirement because new regulations have not been passed yet, and he responded back with, "I'm telling you what the state is telling me." It's disturbing to listen to my teachers, principal, and superintendent, who I trust, lied to me. If this test was so beneficial, then our school officials would be able to promote it truthfully. But instead, our school officials choose to use misinformation, intimidation, and scare tactics on parents and students. The time and effort that is put into this test contradicts what education should be. At the last Board of Education meeting, I feel as if my speech was censored. The board president stated, if the students were there to speak about a topic other than PARCC, then he would have given us more time to speak. Despite what you may hear, PARCC has reduced my classroom instruction time. We have used nearly all of our ILA class time for PARCC practice for an entire week. Our practice time has totaled 6 hours and 40 minutes, on top of a week on Chromebooks before spring break in my math class, which totaled 3 hours and 20 minutes. It's also important to understand that our media center is off limits for the last 2 weeks, and our school still has another week and a half of PARCC testing. In social studies, Chromebooks are not available because they're needed for PARCC testing, and they won't be available again until PARCC testing is over. In addition to that, my regular Spanish classroom is being utilized for students to take PARCC, and my class is being moved to a different room without the normal resources we usually have to help us learn. For a test that students spend hours and hours preparing and testing for, how does it benefit the students? We don't get our test results back until months later, and even then we don't see the specific questions we didn't do well on, so we can't improve upon them. I've shared information with my peers through a research presentation where we got to pick our own topics. I chose standardized testing. After an hour of presenting and being questioned by students and teachers, I got many thank yous from my classmates. One said, "You're the only one who is brave enough to stand up for all of us." They're just as scared to speak up, just as much as our teachers. I will not allow a test to tell me my worth. My teachers that work with me each day know my weaknesses and my strengths, and it is their assessments that my parents and I value. One thing my teachers taught me is to stand up for what's right. I feel as if I had done just that this evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ava Traulsen, and I came here tonight to support all the people who oppose PARCC testing. As a student at Hammersholt Middle School, I wanted to share with the board how the PARCC has changed my school experience. Prior to PARCC, I was used to taking teacher-made tests and some sort of standardized tests such as the New Jersey Ask. It was never a big deal and did not affect my learning experience. Last year, when PARCC was introduced, I could sense that this was something different. This year, a week in advance, many of my teachers have already confirmed that we'll be watching movies during our class time instead of learning. That's a whole 6 days that my classmates and I could have been learning valuable information. My teachers were instructed not to give us any homework or to teach us new lesson plans during the week of PARCC testing because they did not want us to feel stressed out. But the question is, how does this help me as a student? It doesn't. I've spent several full class periods practicing PARCC-based questions on the Chromebooks. These Chromebooks will not be available for us to use until the middle of May, and the same thing goes for the iPads, laptops, computers, any labs, and even our own library. Last year on the bus, I got teased for not taking the PARCC test because they had thought I had refused because it would be too hard for me. But those kids did not know that their education is on the line, and if that they did not refuse and help get rid of the PARCC testing for good, the education will go downhill. It is confusing to me when my supervisor told me that they will have a hard time placing me for my classes next year because I did not have a PARCC score. But what about all those tests I've taken and my report card? I believe that will show what I'm capable of. I've been put in difficult positions when my teachers have spoken about how kids refuse the PARCC test will have a problem going to Churchill. I recently had a teacher single me out in front of my whole entire class and declared that kids need to learn they cannot opt out on life, job, or school, or anything that come across later on. This made me feel like I was being judged as taking the easy way out. It hurts to see that my teachers are not allowed to verbally speak out on how they feel about this test. I have always looked up to my teachers, and they have always taught me to fight for what is right. So why would I have to risk my chance of not getting a good and full education? A student has one shot out of education, so we have to make it count, because there is no going back. I would like to see my school go back to the way it was before the PARCC testing was brought in, where teachers taught, students learned, and there was not all this test pressure upon us students. I would like to thank you guys for listening to my views.
Thank you.
My name's Chris Rampaul. I live at 19 Dorothy Lane. I'm very proud of this district, but I do feel that this test is changing a lot of what makes it so excellent. And I'm actually here to talk about how it's actually changing the lower grades, even below testing grades. Though my daughters are not in testing grades this year, they're already feeling the impacts of PARCC testing. My daughter's first grade experience and how it is influenced by PARCC has really been a shocking experience. Only a month and a half into the school year, I started to notice the amount of tests my first grader was receiving study guides home for. But what really struck me as odd were the new math tests that would not be read to first grade students, despite some of our first grade teachers' opinions that it was not written in a language they would expect first graders to be able to read, even by the end of the school year. To be clear, I'm talking about district-mandated tests that were unreadable by students this district it wasn't able to be read by students that this district deems meeting grade level or exceeding grade level for reading. And here they are as students with their first experience with formal math tests, and they come home from school and they don't even know what was on the test that day. I'd soon learned that most of her tests were required by the district and that the teachers were not allowed to use their judgment of whether the students could even read the tests. Another parent and I soon met with our principal and an administrator questioning why the teachers were forced to administer tests in this manner. The only concrete answer I ever received from an administrator was that it's part of ongoing data analysis to ensure that our students will be PARCC ready by third grade. We're being told that PARCC is a tool, but it's become clear that we've already allowed it to become our new goalpost. I know that some board members have young children, but I'd really like to emphasize that the changes that are taking place and the way that I think PARCC is corrupting our curriculum, it's happening year to year. The experience of a first grader this year is so very different from last year or the year before that. Another such example of that is the introduction of midterm exams for first graders. At this time last year, the board recognized that overtesting was having a negative impact on our students and looked to eliminate a specific set of tests. And though students disagreed with eliminating that specific set of tests, I do believe there was still a consensus about there being too much emphasis on testing in general. With that in mind, it puzzles me that our district would increase so dramatically the number of days our youngest students are tested. I'm also struck by what they're missing out on to make time for all of these tests. Soon after the first grade midterms, I learned that our first graders will take a district-mandated test on at least 52 days of this school year, some of which we don't even get to see as parents. This is from information I received in communication with my principal, or my daughter's school principal. These are tests that are mandated out of this building. It does not include their regular reading tests or their weekly sight word tests. If you include those tests, my daughter gets on her school bus roughly half the school days of the year, wondering how she'll do on a test that day. There are first graders at her school displaying signs of test-taking anxiety, having breakdowns during the tests, and a fellow parent shared with me their need to hide the study guides when they come home from school because their child is just obsessing and worrying and can't sleep over it. This is first grade. These are young children who should experience the joys of learning in an enriching way and learn the gratification of knowing that they tried their hardest to demonstrate their work when they've had a fair opportunity to do so on a test. I understand the needs for assessment, for challenging curriculum, but this is excessive. Our state legislature and our governor were in agreement. You know, our legislature and our current governor don't agree on much when it comes to education right now, but they passed and signed a law last year that made it illegal to subject kindergartners to second graders to standardized testing. And I understand why they made an allowance for the use of teacher and district level tests, but I don't believe that exemption, I don't believe that our current assessment program for first graders falls in the spirit of what they meant by that exemption.
45 seconds.
The number of district mandated standardized tests that our first graders take is simply excessive and unreasonable. There's no doubt in my mind that the increase has to do with the advent of PARCC. In fact, if you look at where the increase in testing for first grade has taken place over the last 2 years, it's only in the PARCC tested subjects where the number of tests have nearly doubled. I've been assured by administrators recently that the overall assessment schedules are going to be looked at in June. I really would ask the board, I've asked our administration of this, but I really would hope that you would push to ensure that there are parents in that work group and that there are current classrooms in that work group, ones that have an early childhood background.
Time.
Okay.
Finish up. Go ahead, Mr. Rampaul, finish up.
I also really would ask that the board take a stance on the secrecy that exists around our children's tests. I believe at the first grade level that parents should have knowledge of their students' tests and they should be sent home for parents to see their work. I've been assured that by an administrator that there will be more transparency regarding district mandated testing next year. And I'm asking you, counting on you as a board to ensure that that happens. I think that the board really could set the tone about the culture of testing in this district. The privacy boards that dismantle the trust between students and teachers in first grade, the stakes that are placed, I think, on the first grade midterm exams and finals. The students are actually given prizes in front of their classmates based on if they got the highest scores in class. I think it's inappropriate, and I really think it's going to cause lasting damage to our budding students. So I just want to say thank you to the parents that refuse this test. My children are not PARCC testing age yet, but I think that they're sticking up for all of our students in the district, and so I want to say thank you to them.
Thank you, Ms. Rampaul.
Hi, good evening. Richard Walling, Director of the Old Bridge Village Heritage Center, which is in East Brunswick. I'm a East Brunswick High School graduate in 1975. My mom, Jean Walling, was president of the Board of Ed, and I was a student council representative back in my high school days. I'm here this evening just to bring to the public's attention and the board's attention and the administration's attention that on May 30th, which is Memorial Day, there will be a series of events commemorating the young men who fought and served in our American Civil War. 600,000 Americans died in that war. That was 3% of our general population, more than 20% of the population of those young men of military age. So just imagine 20% of young men never coming home. Abraham Lincoln gave the famous Gettysburg Address in which he stated that our nation shall have a new birth of freedom, that every American, regardless of race, creed, et cetera, we're all equal in this country, and that was the American Civil War was all about. For more than 50 years, a local student had read Lincoln's Gettysburg Address at the Union Veterans Plot at Chestnut Hill Cemetery, which is about a quarter mile down the road from where we are on Old Bridge Turnpike. For more than 50 years, that was a township ceremony. We are renewing that ceremony on May the 30th. We are looking for any student from the ages of 10 to 14 who would like to read that. We're offering a $100 U.S. savings bond, and it's just a wonderful day of commemoration. It's a wonderful day to renew, and I'm amazed at that great American spirit of individualism, which was so well expressed here tonight, that's what our nation is about. We should not forget our past generations. We should carry forward the traditions that make us a unique nation among all nations in the world. And if anybody would like any information, there are two places. On Facebook, there's a website called You Know You're From East Brunswick, which I encourage you to look at in any event. And also, the email address of the Old Bridge Village Heritage Center is obvhc@outlook.com. And I welcome all of you to attend, and it will be a special day in East Brunswick. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Walling.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Debra Corner. I live at 10 Morris Court. I'm very grateful for the time that you have given to afford the public the right to speak and address you this evening. And I hope that you understand that it is, just as it is for you in service to the board, something that people are taking time out of their normal lives because they feel so strongly about. Just as you feel so strongly that you will work to be elected to serve on this board, these parents here this evening feel this strongly on this topic and have come in an evening to address you on it. I'm deeply grateful. You know, I just want to start with one thing, which is that my son is a senior this year. He had a fabulous first grade teacher at Irwin School, Mrs. Look, and I don't think he ever knew that he was being assessed. I am quite sure that until third grade, he didn't know what a test was. He's a senior this year, and you know what? He's graduating. He's got a pretty good future laying ahead of him. I just don't think what we're doing is necessary for the quality of education that this district can take so much pride in. It is perhaps fitting after Mr. Walling that I was thinking about the quote that injustice everywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. That's Martin Luther King Jr. And so even if you were to say, you know what, these students here this evening, these parents here this evening are the exception to the rule, I would say that an injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere, and we must address it. The first thing to address is that the law is clear. In new NJSA Title 18A:7C, 6-6, it says that the state graduation proficiency test shall be administered to all 11th grade pupils and to any 11th or 12th grade pupil who has previously failed to demonstrate mastery of state graduation proficiency standards on said test. I do not read that, and I am not a lawyer, but I have spoken to plenty, as allowing for the graduation exit exams to require 9th, 10th, and 11th grade end-of-course exams over the course of 3 years. But that is precisely the regulations that are being proposed through the State Board of Education that we are going to Trenton to comment on May 4th, and we invite you to join us. Because these regulations stand in direct opposition both to statute and to common sense about what kinds of assessments help us establish whether a child is ready to graduate. Only 17 states use an exit exam. Only, I think, 2 use PARCC, or are trying to use PARCC. It is simply not a necessary pathway to ensure success. My son will graduate without ever having taken a PARCC exam. So there is a regulatory process underway for the State Board to change graduation requirements starting in the class of 2020, and that's what this resolution is intended to address. The court decision around the ELC and ACLU lawsuit is not expected to be imminent, as is reported in that article. But that suit addresses the concerns of this year's graduating class. The resolution that you have in front of you is to address the proposed regulations going through proper administrative procedure, because they learned their lesson over the ELC and ACLU lawsuit, to establish a new requirement for the classes of 2020 moving forward. And we are in direct opposition to that. The governor's own testing commission was in opposition to that. And we request that you move swiftly on this. We wish you had moved this evening because it would have been wonderful to go to the May 4th State Board meeting and testify, as some of us will, to say that our district stands proudly with 10 other districts in opposition to the State Board's attempt to break a law and to move towards an untested test for the form of an exit graduation. We have been to Trenton. We've been to Trenton to talk to the State Board members. We've met with Mark Beardron one-on-one in small living rooms of families and parents with whom he's come to visit. We have spoken with Assemblyman Dignan and Senator Ruiz. We have testified at the Assembly and the Senate Education Committee hearings. We have been before the Joint Committee of Public Schools. We have spoken with lobbyists one-on-one, or legislators one-on-one in their offices. We are doing our share of this work, and we are asking you, as our elected officials, to represent this district, to step up and stand with us. Because, frankly, there is a choice. We can ignore the fact that they are breaking the law, as we have had them break the law over SFRA funding, as we have had them break the law over the charter school in our district. And we can continue to allow them to break the law, and they will continue to find new ways to do it. And in each way we are diminished, go back to the words of Martin Luther King Jr., And in each way, we are hurting our district. And I wonder where the threshold is at which we cannot return from allowing the state to bully us into following their regulations or their mandates that are breaking law and common sense and good pedagogy without standing up and saying enough is enough. Parents are saying enough is enough. Students are saying enough is enough. And we elect you to represent us and this school district, and we are asking you to stand with us, not just in your words at this board meeting, but through formal passage of resolution, through coming with us to Trenton to see those legislators, testifying at the state board meeting, meeting with HESP, which frankly you all can do a lot more easily than we as parents can do, and making your voice known. Commissioner HESP. So I'll end with this. Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, and it never will. Find out just what any person will quietly submit to, and you have found out the exact measure of injustice and wrong which will be imposed upon them. And these will continue till they are resisted with either words or blows, or with both. That's Frederick Douglass. I suggest that we do not concede any more of our power to what is wrong, and that we stand up together and fight back for what is right for the students of East Brunswick. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Corner-Vaca. Anyone else wish to address the board? Now, I will comment, some things were said this evening that do have me concerned. Now, some things, as was pointed out by several of you who spoke, we cannot control, but some things we can. Now, to the extent that we are still required by the state to administer this test, and to the extent that it is still not a graduation requirement, I'm going to ask Dr. Valesky to please make sure that we don't have any coercion, any stigmas, any messaging to any kids that are not taking this test that would make them at all uncomfortable, as has been brought out this evening. I know some of this is coming to your attention for the first time this evening, but like I said, as long as we are still within that area, I would ask, that we continue to make sure that we do that.
Let me just respond, because I heard it as well tonight. It has never been a directive or a policy or even an initiative from the administrative office that we use any mechanism to try to convince people, students, to change the position on taking the PARCC. However, I do want to make clear, we are required under the corrective action plan to encourage participation in the PARCC. It is clear that in order to meet that corrective action plan, we have certain things we have to do. They are mandated by the state. So we can all disagree with them, but it is, as part of my authority and ability as a superintendent, that I have to do those things. To do that, we scheduled forums at each of the schools, and we invited parents to participate in those forums. Our conversation was meant to be with parents. If parents seemed unsure, principals were given the authority to have conversations with parents. Once a refusal was given, in writing or verbally, that was the end of the discussion. And children were never, ever to be approached. But I will look into the concerns that have been expressed here tonight. I'm just telling you what, from my position, what the intention was from the administrative office. So, in our opinion, from the administrative office, the refusal is a parental option. However, if during the testing, a child refused the assessment, they were never, ever supposed to be encouraging the student to re-engage in the assessment. So once a child determined they weren't going to take the assessment, then that was the end of it. But once an assessment was opened, if they had started an assessment, you can't refuse the assessment and have it voided. So if you never started to take it, it could be voided, but if it was started, it was going to count. So I just want to clarify that.
Thank you very much, and thank you. And on that note, we will take 5.